To launch a successful invasion of Spain from Portugal, Wellington needed to capture the fortress cities of Ciudad Rodrigo and Badajoz. These fortresses guarded the two main routes into Spain, and both were held by the French. In January 1812, Wellington successfully laid siege to Ciudad Rodrigo. He then marched his troops south to Badajoz, to one of the greatest and darkest episodes in the history of the British Army. His troops surrounded the city and began digging the parallels or trenches that would house the heavy cannon needed to batter the walls. The digging was hard, and the army was poorly equipped for the task. After the parallels were dug and the guns installed, the Allies started to pound selected areas of the walls, creating a breach through which the attackers could storm into the fortress. On the 6th of April 1812, Wellington gave the order that the assault would begin at 10 that night. Many thought he gave it too soon, but with the French army now threatening Ciudad Rodrigo, Wellington needed a quick result at Badajoz. The attack was spearheaded by volunteers, known as the Forlorn Hope. At 10 o'clock they raced for the breach, but the French were ready for them. The breach itself was a rubble slope at about 45 degrees, littered with planks studded with sharp nails. At the top, there were dozens of these vicious things, timbers with sword blades. Behind them there was a low wall lined with French infantry, and this whole area was swept by artillery fire. More than 40 times the bugles rang out, and officers yelled the order to advance. Every one of the assaults was repulsed. Not a single Allied soldier got through alive. Wellington was on a hill outside Badajoz, listening to reports which told him that attack after attack had failed. He remained outwardly calm, but his chief medical officer, Dr. James McGregor, could see by the flickering light that he'd turned pale and his jaw had dropped. Perhaps he was moved by the sheer scale of suffering so close at hand. Perhaps he wished he'd spent another day bombarding the defences. But I think that he knew that Britain would only accept losses on this scale for some result. Maybe the whole future of the campaign hung in the balance. He simply had to take Badajoz. He ordered Picton to try another assault at the castle, but it was a long shot. The 3rd Division, led by Sir Thomas Picton, attacked the old Moorish castle that formed part of the town. Here there was no breach, and they had to climb scaling ladders. One officer described their rungs as being slippery with the blood and brains of brave men. But they kept trying. Somehow, against all the odds, this assault succeeded. It was as if sheer, indomitable willpower had lifted the soldiers over the walls. Once inside, an officer lowered the French flag and ran his own jacket up the flagpole, an unmistakable signal to his comrades at the breach that they were in. As Picton's men poured into the town, the French resistance collapsed. Badajoz had fallen. But the assault was not over yet. The surviving British troops who stormed into Badajoz went berserk. They rampaged through these streets, savagely attacking the Spanish inhabitants, raping women, even bayoneting children. A young officer recorded the horror.
Men, women and children were shot in the streets for no other apparent reason than pastime. Every species of outrage was publicly committed in the houses, churches and streets, and in a manner so brutal that a faithful recital would be too indecent to humanity. Wellington's fury at the sack of Badajoz was matched by his grief
when he saw the carnage at the breach. Perhaps 2,500 men had been killed or wounded here. Some were horribly burnt by mines, others dismembered by artillery fire, and others still struggling to emerge from beneath heaps of bodies of their friends. Wellington broke down and wept. When Picton arrived to congratulate him, Wellington was still distraught. He admitted, "I could not help crying. I bit my lip and did everything I could to stop myself, for I was ashamed he should see it, but I could not. And he so little entered into my feelings that he said, 'Good God, what is the matter?'" Wellington's response to Badajoz was typical of his contradictory attitude to the ordinary soldiers who served under him. He was deeply moved by their bravery, and at the same time appalled by their savagery. Once he even referred to them as the scum of the earth.